Welcome back to my channel, Star Booze.
One of the most renowned actresses in movie history and the timeless beauty of Italy, Sophia Loren has for almost 70 years. She enthralled audiences worldwide with her grace, natural ability, and a memorable presence. Her path from a weak, unnoticed child who was formerly thought to be unattractive and was brought up in Povichin battled to the pinnacles of Hollywood fame is a heartbreaking tale of suffering and persistence. However, beneath the glittering lights and Hollywood praise, there is a reality that few genuinely comprehend: what actually became of the woman who once helped to define a whole era, elegance and profundity of feeling. Let's traverse a life full of sorrow, success, and unwavering grace. We would love to hear from you before we start. How, on a scale of 0 to 10, what grade would you give Sophia Loren? Your viewpoint is very important. The sound of a mother's quiet weeping and the birth of Sophia Loren. The Sophia Loren sound of hospital doors closing behind them, a mechanical clank. What came next was not childhood. It was the most basic manner of survival. 1934 saw the birth of a Roman. She was born into a love that never ended in a maternity center for single mothers. Discovered the name of a man who would not even admit it. His last name, Romilla Vanni. Her mother was formerly a beauty queen who had aspirations of Hollywood fame, and a Greta Garbo-like appearance had attracted the attention of Riccardo. Colong was a man who was easily tempted but never committed. When he disappeared into the shadows when she became pregnant, leaving her to raise Sophia. In silence and shame. However, despite initially leaving her, Riccardo came back, only to disappear once more, leaving behind Maria, a 1938 child. Maria was, we denied his name because he would not sign the birth certificate. Sophia was already on the rise. Star had to reimburse him years later in order for Maria to be able to legally wear it. It wasn't fairness for a cost. The wound was reopened. The early years of Sophia were characterized by an agonizing lack of safety, hunger, and guilt. She was raised in Poti. Living in a dilapidated house close to Naples with a large, destitute family. On some evenings, 10 people were huddled in one room, sharing their anxieties with one another. Her mum was a pianist. At neighborhood bars with a few drinks, her granny unwrapped a small bottle of cherry brandy. Shop from the comfort of their own home. Additionally, Sophia, who was still a youngster, served and cleaned dishes. Soldiers with a grin she didn't know how to interpret. Although the pain persisted, it was silent. A pain that permeated the walls and seeped beneath the epidermis. Food was a hope, not a promise. There were weeks when everyone, if Romilla asked her neighbors for a handful of rice or a single potato, it was all she could give her daughters. One day, Romilla scooped water from a car radiator in an act that still breaks people's hearts to prevent Maria and Sophia from becoming dehydrated. There was no desperation there. It was the gradual suffering of a mother in a world that has closed its doors to them. Then the conflict arrived. The sky over Naples during World War II's horrific bomb split apart. Sirens cried out. Kids cried. Sophia recalls that she mistook an American soldier dropped a chocolate chunk in search of an unidentified prize, as she had never experienced something so lovely. It was a fleeting moment. Blood brought reality back. One shrapnel flew across the streets after the explosion, and a piece ripped into her face, creating a scar that no youngster should have on their chin. She would discover how to never forget it, even if you put makeup over it. The injury was minor. Thea great shame. She was made fun of for being slender. Her peers referred to her as the ugly girl, and worse, as a toothpick and a small stick. She was once described as the ugliest infant she had ever seen, even by her own wet nurse. Numerous wounds are associated with fame. Can encompass, but one of them is not abuse of children. Nevertheless, something graphed to shatter in Sophia. Her body transformed when she was 14. Eyes and curves blossomed at chirpend. The ugly duckling no longer had the appearance of a war-torn girl. She appeared as though a force were emerging from the ashes. As she strolled along the road, men gazed. Agencies took note. At last, beauty had surpassed the spirit that had endured so much suffering. However, years would pass before the world viewed the entirety of her tale. There was always that young girl behind the glitz and the elegance, scarred, forgotten, and hungry. However, for a young woman who had only known the promise of beauty was never limited to vanity. Despite hunger, shame, and silence, it was the final card for survival. And when the time for opportunity finally arrived, it did. With the appearance of a different man, she would come to love and endure hardships for Carlo Ponti. The metamorphosis of 14-year-old Sophia Loren wasn't a glitzy movie montage. It was a silent uprising. Toothpick, the skinny derided child, had developed into a voluptuous young lady. And all of a sudden the same reality fattened away and started to gaze. But the brutality persisted. Her wisper's illegitimacy hung on like a dark cloud. She competed in beauty pageants, not because of donning a garment made from pink curtains out of desperation, but vanity because it weighs her thieving her granny could afford. She didn't do that when she took the stage, only desire a crown. She wanted an escape. Root was there when Carlo noticed her. Ponti was a well-known film producer who was married, almost twice her age, and had kids. He was spellbound. She was 16. Their encounter would prepare the ground for one of the most intricate, contentious, and long-lasting love tales in the history of film, a tragedy she would bear in her heart for the rest of her life. Tucci was a discovery Ponti, a soul that was both unadulterated and radiant. He was Loren's favorite, the first man to see talent and see past the disgrace. He assisted in molding her identity, starting with her Swedish-inspired name, Sophia Loren Martatoren, an actress. She received little attention for her early performances, just more than backgrounds of faces. However, every frame was a step closer to Podi, hunger, and her mother's eyes bore scars from the tragedy. Success, however, did not make suffering go away, it was repackaged. The weight of scrutiny was behind each flash of the camera. Each and every her on-screen statement was compared to the headlines that questioned her relationship with America. Sophia fought for more than simply roles. She fought for honor, but because of their strong Catholic beliefs, the Italian populace saw her relationship with Pontius scandalous. There were moral condemnations, judgments, and murmurs. Even though with gentle dedication Ponti guided her as she developed her profession, and navigated because it was illegal in Italy to divorce his first wife. Loren stood between two worlds, one of unrelenting moral criticism and the other of increasing fame. However, she pushed through the confusion. Her image started to appear on magazine covers, alongside heavyweights of the industry. Her name was mentioned in movie credits. From Quodish wasn't merely surviving to Aida and La Favorita, she was evolving. Additionally, she bore the burden of a past she couldn't claim, and love she couldn't claim with every stride could never forget. Despite her smile before the lights flashed, a piece of her stayed the girl in the curtain garment, silently hurting, hungry and scrutinized. Though the world witnessed the glitz, but Sophia Loren understood that her success was not based on scars, but with dreams. All I ever want was love, not content, she once thought back, repeating the wordless supplication that had propelled her from party to the pinnacles of global recognition. Her ascent was swift, and her attractive and scholastic, but her spirit was still wounded from years of scandal and rejection, and she played every part similar to a wound. When Sophia Loren entered the Italian sound stages and then Hollywood, in addition to having a beautiful body and flaming eyes, also a depth of suffering and tenacity that silently spoke out from under this. Following years of being made fun of as the ugly duckling and dismissed as she clawed her illegitimate child from the back alleyways of war-torn Naples. Way into the business with a combination of willpower and desperation. Early movie roles in films such as Corvadas were brief cameos where the credits didn't even include her name, but the camera couldn't keep her out of sight. Her starring role in Ida by 1953 started toe track notice in Italy, demonstrating that she was more than simply a gorgeous face performer who had the depth of feeling of someone who had really been hurt. It was Loren exploded onto the scene in 1954 with Victoria Dacus, The Gold of Naples, Italian cinematic landscape portraying characters that were shamelessly human, complex, and grounded. The golden gates of Hollywood soon opened as her celebrity expanded quickly. She got a 5-picture deal with Paramount Pictures in 1956, an innovative moment for any Italian actress hoping to gain notoriety in the industry, not just Loren's U.S. market. In her Hollywood debut, she co-starred with titans such Anthony Perkins in Desire Under the Elms and Cary Grant in Houseboat, where she gained recognition as a genuine talent as well as a siren. However, the most crucial period in Loren's career, when she transitioned from fame to immortality, appeared in the film To Women in 1960. First of all, Loren struggled for art and won the role of mother after being cast as the daughter Cesara in a terrifying story about surviving World War II. The show wasn't varnished, exposed and painfully genuine. It wasn't acting, it was a reliving. Loren acknowledged in one of her infrequent interviews, "I always carried that hungry little girl's silence in my eyes, no matter how far I went." Once, that girl, she stood in front of millions of people and was told she was too poor, too small, and too dark. She had never forgotten though, and maybe that's what made Sophia Loren a mirror as much as a legend. She did not engage in any play roles, she lived them out. Additionally, she provided the world with a portrait of resilience was so vivid that it was therapeutic. Red was not the foundation of her legacy. Stylish dresses or rugs. It was fashioned from the pain of her early years, and thus she wouldn't let the fire extinguish. This was not the tale of a stunning lady who achieved notoriety. It told the tale of a broken person who turned her suffering into her palette and used it to light up the globe. Sophia's wounds weren't all caused from her broken upbringing. Later, some were done in the name of love. Bound to a man she could never truly understand, enveloped in desire, and locked in secrecy and never relinquish, a man who became her grief and her rescue. For Sophia Loren, love came with strife, complexity, and not much hoopla. And unfeasible decisions. She met famous filmmaker Carlo Ponti when she was just 16, 21-year-old producer, who is already married and has 2 kids. There the link was faithful, instantaneous, and indisputable. Later, Sophia acknowledged, "He had a power and kindness about him that I found endearing that initially observed." However, the world in which their love was created did not make space for it. In Italy in the 1950s, divorce was prohibited. Carlo's lawful wife allegedly denied him the divorce he required, and her tacit opposition hovered over their relationship like a curse. Even though she didn't often speak in public, her reluctance spoke of volumes, resulting in years of exile, disdain, and subterfuge for Ponti and Loren. Desperate to save what they had in 1957, Ponti and Loren covertly married in Mexico, a relationship that Italian law quickly denounced. Ponti was Sophia, who was only in her 20s, was accused of bigamy and given a housewrecker, a woman in scarlet, and a representation of scandal. The societal verdict was vicious and unrelenting. In search of safety in a country where love reigned, they fled to France. Had no jail time associated with it. Following almost 10 years of persistent legal despite moral disapproval and conflict, they were eventually permitted to get married legally in 1966, after obtaining citizenship in France. However, the cost has already been incurred. Their country rejected them, their professions were put on hold, and Sophia's desire for a family was still a raw wound. Her miscarriages weren't merely medical in nature. Happenings they were, heartbreaking destructions every time a child died. A piece of me years later, she said that it had faded. Nevertheless, she held on through the gloom. Hope. Carlo Jr.'s birth in 1968 was the ultimate fulfillment of that ambition. Eduardo in 1973. These sons served as her salvation and her sanctuary. Love with Ponti had always been complex. Therefore, the scars were still there. He was more than just her companion. He was her tutor, the creator of her public persona, and occasionally her boss. Their partnership was based on perseverance rather than comfort. Big newer participation in a half-life imagery encased in landmarks and memories. Ponti passed away in 2007. Although everyone witnessed Loren's grief, few were able to really understand how deeply lost. A part of me also died when he did, she muttered. I continued to talk to it. Wasn't just the end of a marriage, it was him every night. It was a love story's last chapter that had influenced it, left her damaged for more than half a century. And with each movie, each prize, each whispered gossip and victorious return, that love, its happiness, its price, its profundity, the heartbeat stayed silent. The timeless legend of Sophia Loren. However, it is impossible to overlook the empire they co-founded, not because of its glamour but because of its glamour. The possessions Ponti and Sophia had amassed at the time of his death stood as a striking example of their recovery from poverty. With more than 50 years of collective commitment through movies, artwork, through their real estate endeavors and collectibles, they accumulated a wealth worth the tens of millions. From the girl who used to drink from the radiator of a car to the lady who oversaw a mansion brimming with Renaissance treasures, Sophia's finances were not an inheritance, it was defeated. That villa in the ancient Iron neighborhood of Rome, and encircled by verdant gardens covering 15,000 square meters, is more than a home. It represents a life reconstructed from ruins. From the ravages amidst war and hardship, Sophia's path to establishing such enduring beauty and affluence was nothing short of heroic. The marble in her hallways and the artwork on her walls are not simply items of luxury. They stand as tributes to a woman who transformed every injury into Ulpo. Or Sophia's legacy is evidence that, in a society that frequently confuses celebrity with wealth, the legacy of Sophia Loren demonstrates that true richness is developed through endurance. Surpasses the realm of film. She is renowned not just for her beauty but also for her strength. Her narrative is one of perseverance rather than perfection. Additionally, in every sparkle in her ageless eyes is the reflection of a woman who lost and loved intensely, profoundly, and endured it all with amazing grace. However, before sorrow and quiet descended upon her Roman home, there was another chapter in the life of Sophia Loren. A brief, delicate, and almost forgotten what if those who are aware of her tale are still haunted by that. It developed not alone, but at the same time that she was covertly falling for Carlo Ponti, while beneath the surface, ambition, fear and love were clashing her image as a poised rising celebrity, while the pride and the passion was being filmed. Sophia first met the endearing Cary Grant in 1956. Sophisticated and already iconic, what started off as an on-screen collaboration swiftly expanded into a much more complex emotional situation. Cary experienced intense love, and suggested, even so, Sophia acknowledged that she felt the tug of his love. She loved him a lot, perhaps even loved him. Yet she was caught between the assurance and genuineness of his proposition, and her devotion to a man who showed her affection with both private storms and societal danger. There was an impossible thing that broke her heart: decision, one that put her morals and feelings to the test. She pivoted Cary down, not without suffering, but with a choice based more on obligation than desire. She acknowledged years later that some choices have a more subtle afterlife than others, yet they continue to linger. It was an uncommon occasion when Sophia Loren, who frequently posed as a source of strength and beauty, exposed the silent pain of what could be. After discovering Grant's love, Carlo Ponti was enamored with envy. At a fit of rage, and at the last agonizing second, he faced Sophia. He slapped her, leaving it engraved in her memory. If a man gets jealous, I believe it indicates that headers me. An attempt to make sense of something far more bruising than romantic. She once remarked, it was more than just possessiveness at that moment. It exposed the delicate chords of in a relationship. Power, fear, and love are intertwined and continuously surrounded by judgment and concealment. Since Sophia had already borne so much, she bore it in silence. Her beneath poise lies anguish. Her decisions were influenced not just by her desires, but the world wouldn't pardon it. But Sophia Loren, not all the suffering suffered as a result of love or loss. Silently, certain injuries were administered behind locked doors where her popularity was not visible from the lights of Hollywood flushed in the late 1950s and early 1960s, solidifying her reputation as a global symbol. Sophia silently faced the negative aspects of celebrity, the concealed humiliations, the unspoken transgressions, and the psychological burden, often appreciated but not always treated with respect. One of the most tragic episodes was her time spent filming The Millionaires with Peter Sears on set. 1960. The talented but erratic British comedian Sellers developed an obsession with her, letting his passion take over his private life. He abandoned his spouse and children, thinking that his desire alone could make him obtain Sophia. However, she strongly rebuffed him, refusing to compromise her ethics. She wasn't mean when she rejected him. Nevertheless, it troubled her because, despite her silence, her family was intact, split apart, and a man descending into anarchy. Later on, she acknowledged having a strong sorrow for what transpired, despite the fact that she had nothing to do with it. It was certain among the burdens that women frequently bear, unjustly, the responsibility for a man's suicide. Next came a more terrifying experience, one that left a scar, in addition to remorse. In 1967, while filming A Hong Kong Countess with Marlon Brando, she experienced an unimaginable breach of trust. In a scene intended to show passion was altered by Brando, who grabbed her and forced to kissing her and biting her lips so forcefully that blood was drawn. The script didn't call for it. It wasn't decided. Stunned and ashamed, Sophia withdrew, but she did not create a commotion. Never do, she stated simply as she stood up, chin erect, gaze steady. That to me once more. That one phrase reverberated, more loudly than any tirade. It was strength without show, rebellion without drama. Later, she remembered that moment as both one of the most disrespectful of her career and a time when she fully realized her you are more than the parts you play. Additionally, you are the difficulties that you endure. Sophia Loren had always been regarded as a goddess by the world. However, it was in thought most desolate, lonely time in a jail cell without a screenplay, without spotlight, demonstrating that she was a unique individual with unwavering poise in the face of adversity. Legends, they say, never die. Additionally, for Sophia Loren, that truth endures in the silent world as well as on movie reels, the grace of her modern existence. She lives mostly in Geneva and is now in her 90s, Switzerland, away from the limelight that used to follow her around the red carpet. It is a place of peace, healing, and introspection, suitable for a lady who spends a lifetime of continuous sound and sight. Despite selling her famous Roman house in 2007, Villa Sera's soul continues to haunt the houses she cherished, carefully chosen, containing memories, artwork, and photos that only she can completely. Her second previous residence, a sizable California summer home, her son's description of it as a small village was similarly descriptive of a life lived in splendor. Sophia, however, now favors simplicity over grandeur. Her monetary legacy is just as motivating. With an estimated net worth, Sophia has accumulated a wealth of $75 million to $150 million through decades of commitment to smart investments and movie endorsements. The property where they currently reside is a high-value principal residence in Geneva, although her residences that sold, such as Villa Sera in Italy and La Concordia in California for about $7 million, demonstrate a life of success and fineness of appearance. She once had a condo at Williams Island as well. Florida is renowned for its opulence and seclusion. Her fortune extends beyond real estate, is supported by a collection of fine art and expensive jewels, includes those that were previously taken in million-dollar thefts. The sale of Ageless one picture by Francis Bacon brought almost $16.5 million, highlighting the magnitude of her own holdings. She experienced a severe fall in 2023 that fractured at her thigh and hip, an incident that might have taken the lives of numerous people her age. However, not Sophia. With the same determination that saw her through poverty, conflict, and she had to deal with recovery hidden after a public scandal. Going to physiotherapy times every week, she eats a balanced Mediterranean diet that is high in choosing light meals, salads, and fresh pastas. Even now, discipline is unyielding. I owe all you see to spaghetti, she made a joke once. However, underneath the allure is a lifetime of decisions influenced by respect for oneself. Sophia is far from retired. She is still a symbol of eternal life. She starred in the Netflix sensation The Life Ahead in 2020 at the age of 86. Led by Eduardo, a son. It was a rebirth rather than merely a return. Her performance was praised by critics for being hauntingly beautiful and truthful, evidence that genuine artistry only gets better with time. Since then, she has emerged as the face of the Dolce Rosa Ageless, a fragrance by Dolce & Gabbana, had her own namesake launched. Hong Kong-based food chain that made an appearance in the moving Netflix documentary What Would Sophia Does Loren. It acknowledges her lasting impact, but it's not her projects or notoriety that currently characterize her. Her legacy is that, on her 90th birthday, she shined not with celebrity but rather with diamonds and Giorgio Armani. But with tranquility. According to her, there is a fountain of young people. It's your intellect, your skills, and the originality you bring to your life. She has followed that belief at every turn and continues to do so. To the world, Sophia Loren is a cinematic goddess. Upon closer inspection, she also serves as a lesson on perseverance, change, and silent victory. Her existence has been a harmonious blend of elegance, heartache, bravery, and rebirth. One that keeps on inspire, not just with her actions but also with the type of woman she has evolved. In a society where fame flits and beauty fades, Sophia Loren, to be a flame that will not go out. A monument of elegance created by adversity and fortitude derived from suffering. Her trek from war-torn ashes Naples' journey to the pinnacles of Hollywood. Aristocracy is more than just a success story. It serves as a guide for perseverance, dignity, and overcoming adversity. She is more than just a movie star. Myth. She represents all women who have been disregarded, questioned, or fractured, and yet arose once more, glowing brighter than ever. As Loren once stated, a woman's belief that she is beautiful is what makes her more beautiful, and her life has reflected that belief in every victory. Every heartache and every scar became stardust. We'd like to hear from you now. Following the news of Sophia's ordeal, what aspect of her narrative most touched you, despite her inspirational journey? Using a scale, how much do you admire Sophia Loren? On a scale of 0 to 10, not only as a celebrity, but as a representation of the resilient human spirit. Tell us what you think in the comments section below. And if this story resonated with you, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Heart. For tales such as hers are not to be forgotten. They are intended to, passed on, shared, and recalled.